All right. Well, I have 1 o'clock. Welcome, welcome. We're so glad that you chose to spend the afternoon with us. Again, the tiny URL to the slide deck is in the chat. And we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Stacey Daniel, and I serve as the section chief for ELA and languages. And your presenters today are Karen Solis and Laura Van Camp, and they'll be talking to you about unpacking the ELD standards today. So we're going to spend some time exploring and engaging in activities that are really designed to help you understand the ELD standards and the language expectations. And then you're going to be contributing to a shared artifact that hopefully will help you facilitate implementation or initial implementation starting this fall 2022. What I will say again is just as a reminder, before we get started, just make sure that your video or your camera is turned off and that you're muted, just to reserve bandwidth to limit any possible interruptions to the presenters. And of course, if you have any tech issues or issues navigating WebEx, we're going to ask that you use the chat to do that, so that we can minimize any interruptions to the presentation. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Karen and Laura.
Okay, thank you, Stacy. This is Laura Van Camp, and I want to welcome you to our session today, Unpacking the 2022 ELD Standards. And first off, we just want to tell you a little bit more about us and introduce ourselves. Karen?
Hi, I'm Karen Solis, and I teach middle school in Gaston County. And I have been on the support team since 2010. So happy to be here and be with you today. I'm excited to see Alicia Doss from our support team is also on today, and Sally Stocks. Welcome, welcome, and welcome everybody.
Thank you, Karen. And I'm Laura Van Camp. I'm the lead ESL teacher in Rutherford County. I serve 4 schools ranging from elementary to high school. And I just finished my 17th year teaching ESL. I've been on the EL support team since 2016. I'm very excited to be here with you today. Now, we'd like to know who's here. Please share in the chat what you teach and where you're from. If you can just drop that in the chat, we'll see who's here today. All right, Sarah's K-12 ESL like me. And Alicia, of course, lead in Harnett.
Hi, Cindy
Great.
from Gaston County.
Davie County, Alamance, Iredell, Beaufort, Catawba, Duplin, so many. Welcome, everyone.
I'm seeing a lot of K-5. There's some high school.
Wake and Durham, Charlotte, Charter School,
Nice.
Wayne County. I miss my Wayne County folks. All right, so thank you for that. And it's always a great idea to share out and when you are learning something new. And we would love to see what great things you take away from this session and all of our sessions this week. And hopefully it will create some excitement for others in North Carolina as we learn together and how to best meet the needs of our MLs. So we're using ML now, multilingual learner. And feel free to tweet out throughout the session. And this is our hashtag NCELD22. All right. Now we'd just like to give you a little overview of WebEx. For those of you who are not on WebEx on a regular basis, here's a little snapshot to familiarize you with our conference platform. So some of the features in the lower left-hand corner, you can see the meeting details. In the middle, under this lovely lady's face, are the meeting controls. And you can see there's different things like the hand that you can raise and things like that. And you'll be able to unmute during our discussion activities, so make sure you find that. And for the moment, let's have everyone muted, as Stacy said. You can also change your video layout and view to customize that as you like. And hopefully this will allow you to feel more comfortable because we want to invite you to actively participate so we can all gain from today's training. I know every training I go to, I learn from everyone that's there. So we want that to happen today. All right, next we'd like to highlight our conference notebooks. Hopefully you've been to some other sessions this week. If not, it's okay. Just choose the link to the pathway that suits you the best and fits your role. You can make your own copy, and this is a great tool to collect and keep your thoughts, notes, and artifacts from all of the sessions that you attend this week. You may want to be prepared to toggle between this artifact notebook and our slide presentation by opening a new tab or using two devices. Later on in the present.
Can I just insert here? If you've already made one, don't make a new one today. Go back to that original one because then all your artifacts will be housed in one place for you.
Thank you for adding that. That is so true. Okay, and later on in the presentation, we're going to ask you to do some activities with us, and so you'll need to have those slides open and your conference notebook pulled up so we can complete that work together a little more efficiently. All right, thank you. Next, we are going to do what we like to call a pulse check. This is our poll that is going to be opening on your screen. We'd like to know how familiar you feel with the new ELD standards framework from 0 to 5, 0 being completely new to you, to number 5, I eat, sleep, and breathe this standards framework. So somewhere on that spectrum, please select a number, click on the little circle next to your choice, and hit submit, and our poll will be activated. We'll wait just a few seconds for all of those submissions to come in.
And if you're having issues finding the poll, you can go ahead and just let us know your number in the chat.
Yes.
Couple more seconds, Karen and Laura. We have a couple more people finishing up.
Okay.
Okay. And this, just while we're here, this is a great way for you to kind of do a formative assessment with students as well. You can use things like this, a poll, to find out how much knowledge your students have of something new that you're about to present. So, all right, we have closed the poll, and it looks like the winner is number 2. So number 2 is I've looked at it, but I haven't dug into it. I think that was our top choice yesterday also, with 43% on that. The next number is 12% was a 4. I've attended other PD on the standards framework. Good for you. All right. Then next was a 3, which is I'm familiar with it. That's wonderful. And then 8% were 1s. I've heard it's coming. And we've got 4% that are at a 0, completely new to me. Well, the good news is it's okay. No matter where you are, we're going to learn something new today. So I hope you enjoy the session. Karen will go over some objectives next.
Thank you. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Stacy Daniel for facilitating with us today. In case you aren't familiar with Stacy, Stacy is our NCDPI section chief for ELA and world languages. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Stacy, and being with this presentation. We appreciate you. Okay, so our first objective, we're going to today become acquainted with the purpose, format, contents, and location of the Unpacking Documents resource. And we are going to, if you'll go ahead and click, there you go, to provide ideas for how to use the resource in support of implementation of these standards. And we are going to have a chance to reflect on our practices, check out some research-based standards, aligned practices, and finally get an important part of this session will be that you're going to create an artifact that will promote future application of this material. You can access this presentation by going to that, again, tiny URL at the bottom of the presentation, or we've tried to simplify. If you want a second device, you want to scan with your phone or tablet or something, there's a QR code in the top right corner that you can scan and be able to do that, access this presentation as well. Okay, so let's move right along with our first objective, to become acquainted with the purpose, format, contents, and location of this document. Okay, so on March 4th of 2021, the State Board of Education unanimously approved the 2020 edition of the WEDA English Language Development Standards as our North Carolina ELD standard course of study. So to successfully implement these standards, NCDPI has created this Unpacking documents to deepen the understanding of the NCELD standards and to show how content and language can be learned together. The purpose of these documents is to increase student achievement by providing access to rich, standards-based, grade-level content and ensure all educators have a clear understanding of the expectations of these adopted standards. So the unpacking documents include our ELD standards as well as clarifications, unpacked language functions, in the classroom ideas that I love, and a sample language objective for each bullet within the language expectation. The clarifications appear in the order of the bullet points within the language expectations. However, got to understand, in the classroom ideas and the unpacked language functions and sample objectives are not meant to be an exhausted list, or sample language objectives are not to be only ones that you can use. It's just to get us started. These standards are going to be implemented, in all North Carolina public schools beginning the 22-23 school year. Okay, so first let's set the stage. We still have the 5 standards, and we focus on English language development in social instructional language, language of language arts, language of math, language of science, and language of social studies. Our language expectations are our goals for content-driven language learning. So let's unpack the format. The ELD standards for English language development, LA, here refers to the language of language arts. The grade span is 6-8, and the key language use is narrative. Then the mode is interpretive, and we'll go more into that later. Also, here are key language uses that are embedded in our standards. Each of these are critical to developing our students' ability to communicate effectively in English. We have narrate, inform, explain, and argue. And you can see here the further details are color coordinated with each one. To locate this resource, you can always Google NCDPI ELD Resource Hub, and you may want to add this link to your conference notebook so that you'll be able to locate it easily when you go back. All right, and now let's look at unpacking in more detail.
All right, thank you, Karen. So we're just going to take a little tour of the format of the unpacking documents. So hopefully most of you have been able to go to the unpacking and see how everything is composed and formulated. But what it is, it goes standard by standard as far as the ELD standards, social and instructional language, then ELA, then I believe it's social studies, science, and math. And so the 4th one on this example right here, it's the ELD standard language of science. And then below that, and that's bordered in yellow, below that you'll see another box that's bordered in teal called the language expectation. And right there, this gives you that vital information that you need. And this is something that after today's session, you will be very clear what all of those letters and numbers mean. And the ELD SC is English Language Development Standards for Science. Grade level is kindergarten. This is to inform, and that is one of our key language uses. And the interpretive is the mode of communication. So there is your standard, and you'll notice that there's 2 bullet points there. Well, those bullet points are separated in the next 2 boxes on the left under skills, where you'll see sort of that light teal color bordering those. So the first bullet, determining what text is about, is the first one. So it clarification is there, plus the unpack language functions. And then the second bullet is clarified directly underneath that one, that box, with its clarification and language functions. Then if you look on the right, in the classroom, these are classroom scenarios that are just samples. So they're just examples of ideas how you could apply this standard to a science content in this particular grade span. So for kindergarten science, this example would be appropriate. And so that's your example. And then below that in the purple box is the sample language objective. So a teacher could use that objective to carry out that lesson. So that's just kind of how the format is laid out. And next we're going to do one of our first strategies about how to unpack this information. So the first strategy that we want to talk to you about today is the number the skills strategy. And this is simple, but it's powerful because as you go through and you sort of separate out what you want to cover and how you want to do it, then you'll be able to come up with your lesson plan. And it might be a series of lesson plans just for one standard. So that's perfectly fine. All right. And I know I'm talking to ESL teachers today, and we all know our constraints of time, especially if you're itinerant. You may not get to all of that in one session. That's perfectly fine. You can just stretch it out over different sessions. All right, so the first thing that we want to do is choose the standard. So this one that is on the screen is an ELD science standard for grades 2-3. And the key language use is to explain. Okay, so we know that's what the students are going to be doing, and it's expressive. So they're going to be showing us what they know by speaking or writing mainly. Okay, so the skills we want to look at are number 1, construct a scientific explanation. All right, so we're getting your mind calibrated to this is what I want my students to do. Second skill, describe observations. That means they're going to have to observe something. So maybe in science, you're going to do an experiment or a lab or something like that. Third skill is they're going to describe the data about a phenomenon. So a phenomenon, if you're not familiar with that word, it's one that we use rarely, but in science, I guess they would use that more often. But a phenomenon would just be something that happens in science. So those are your 3 skills. And let's see, let me just make sure I've got everything. Okay, now what you do as far as the second step is you list and underline, underline, highlight, or circle and number. So here I highlighted and I numbered. All right, for you, you might make a list on a sticky note, or you might want to circle those. However that makes sense to your brain is perfect because this is for you. All right, and so you want to know what skills are going to be taught and how many. Lastly, you want to figure out how you can determine mastery or measure the student understanding for the skills. Okay, so in this particular example, you can see that the sample language objective bordered in, well, it would have been in purple if I had bordered it the same way. The sample language objective matches the language expectation perfectly. So you can see they're constructing those explanations when they're talking to their partner. They're describing observations by charting the sound, pitch, and volume, and they're describing the data in a labeled diagram. So they're hitting every single expectation in that language objective, and that's a really good thing. So, some of you may be in a Leader in Me school. Think about beginning with the end in mind here. So whatever it is that you want your students to do, that can be your objective. All right. Next, we're going to go to the same strategy, but this time I'm going to ask you to take a turn in doing this. So we've changed the standard here. So what you're going to do is first, I want you to just do number 1 right now. I want you to read the standard, clarification, skills, classroom scenario, and language objective to yourself. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to do that.
Laura, can you scroll down or there we go. Scroll down a little bit. There we go.
Okay, so hopefully you've had enough time to read through that. Your next step is to highlight what skills and how many skills should be taught. So what are your skills you're going to teach and how many? Yes, you can let us know in the chat. Which skills have you identified? Type it in the chat. That's a great idea, Stacy. This is not mysterious. I'm seeing some language functions, but what are the skills in the language expectation? Good job, Jessica. Okay, that's right. Number 2, identify the topic. Great. So number 1 is interpret social studies arguments, and the second skill is to identify the topic. Well done. Now, what we need to do is figure out how you can determine mastery or measure student understanding for the skills you've identified. There's a sample there under the in the classroom idea. Okay, so how are they, let's say that you wrote this, how are you going to measure mastery or measure student understanding? And when you get that answer, please drop it in the chat. Okay, some great ideas there. So as you look at that classroom example, this teacher is being very skillful in finding a relevant topic, trying to help the students to understand how people will buy things out of panic when there's scarcity. So think about 2020 with toilet paper. So everybody was just like, I've got to have it. And so that was creating that panic and that scarcity. And so that is the topic, right? And then the next thing is how to write those arguments. And they're supported by different scaffolds there. Well done. All right, now we're going to move to our next strategy. Yes, that's good, Sandra. Students will be able to identify topic by drawing and or writing. Good.
A lot of
All right.
these are really, they're just, y'all are giving
Well,
some
what do you
great ideas.
expect? They're ESL. They're ESL teachers. They're amazing. Okay, strategy two, the best fit. And I think this is probably one of my favorites. And at first, it seems kind of simple, but we're sort of wading into this a little bit slower. And so when you look at the screen, I want you to just listen, just kind of settle down and listen to this standard. And I want you to tell me two things. What do you notice? And what do you wonder? After you listen to this, I want you to drop those in the chat. What do you notice or what do you wonder? All right, so our standard here is social studies, fourth and fifth. Explain is our key use. And this mode of communication is interpretive, which means they're listening or they're reading mostly, or sometimes viewing. Interpret social studies explanations by determining different opinions in sources for answering compelling and supporting questions about phenomena or events. So this is pretty wide open. You could think about lots of different things. Now let's look at the clarification. Students identify various opinions expressed in a variety of sources. Okay, so this could be all different kinds of sources for answering compelling and supporting questions about phenomena or events. So your language functions, you're going to define terms, determine different opinions in different sources and that type of thing. All right, to the right, in the classroom scenario, students listen to a read aloud of three different sources regarding the decline of the furniture industry in North Carolina. Okay, North Carolina knows about this. This is something that most people recognize. Number one, a newspaper article on furniture plant closings. That's their first source. Number two, a letter to the editor from an unemployed furniture worker. That would be a different opinion. Number three, an online interview with a legislator serving the area with closed down furniture plants. Totally different opinion or perspective, right? Students listen in order to answering the compelling question. So here it is, the compelling question. What factors led to the decline of the furniture industry in North Carolina? The teacher guides the class in identifying the opinion in the newspaper article, using the document camera and highlighting while thinking aloud. Okay, there's your scaffolds. Students form small groups and identify opinions in either the letter to the editor or the online interview, highlighting sentences that support opinions and referring to the anchor chart as needed. So lots of wonderful scaffolds there too. Now, we've read all of this together. I want you to put in the chat, what do you notice? What do you wonder? And of course, you can unmute and share with us verbally as well. No wrong answers here. Abigail said that she noticed the classroom example involves the use of primary source documents. That's great. That's good to teach our students that and to be able to trust our sources. Okay, Christina notices needs some direct vocabulary instruction for the terms. Great. So that probably would come before this scenario, and that is exactly where we're going with this. All right. They have to have, Jessica saying, students must have a strong grasp on opinion to be able to identify them. Great. Absolutely. So our classroom scenario is not all encompassing, and that's by design. Okay. Real world examples. Very good. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the second part of this strategy. So now we're going to, under number one, we're going to look more deeply at the in the classroom ideas for this standard. Take a moment now to read through the standard and the classroom scenario. I'm going to have you read that one more time. Okay, so bottom line, we are looking at different sources to find an opinion. All right, now feel free to unmute or put in the chat box where you think this classroom scenario would fit. Would it be in the introduction of the lesson, direct instruction or modeling, guided practice, independent practice, or closure? So drop those in the chat or you can unmute. That's totally fine. All right, I'm seeing some direct instruction, guided practice, modeling, guided practice. Yes, great job. Okay, our next question is, what instruction would need to come before it or after it? So if we're sort of agreed that we're in direct instruction guided practice, then someone's already thought about introducing vocabulary. So that would go before, right? So what else could go before and what else could go after? Drop that in the chat or feel free to unmute. Okay, Delane saying a lesson about the difference between fact and opinion, that would need to come before this. Good job. Before would be an example, maybe. Vocabulary before. Introduction to the topic before. Providing background before. Maybe after. Amanda, were you thinking opinion writing after? Okay, I'm seeing some activating prior knowledge or building upon background knowledge before. Modeling specific process for how to identify opinion. Wonderful. So some great, great, great ideas. So in your unpacking document, just keep in mind, these are just ideas. They're nuggets. They're not complete in any way. And you can take them and probably have 10 other ideas in your head, and those would absolutely align with the standard. Okay, beautiful. Okay, now we would like to give you a chance to look at a different standard. And I want you to do exactly what we just did. You're going to use this standard. Yes, you're going to use, let me make sure I've got the right thing up. This standard to look at the classroom idea. I'm going to have you read that to yourself. Now I want you to tell me, where does this one fit? Introduction, direct instruction or modeling, guided practice, independent practice, or closure. And you know what? There can be more than one
Mhm.
because it's just all in how you design it. Okay, some folks are saying introduction. I like that. Some folks are saying guided. Totally. Because we don't really know where the other pieces are. But you could use that for guided, definitely for intro. Where else? Independent, that's what I was thinking about too. So once you've done a grand lesson, that's what I call it, then you could have smaller groups break up and do some of these independent activities. Fantastic. So, I know I'm singing to the choir here, where as ESL teachers, we're we're definitely ratcheting up and ratcheting down and throwing things in because you know your students the best and you know what they need. So if they need more of this type activity, then that's what you're going to weave in. Excellent. You
I
guys
love
did a wonderful job.
I love what Elizabeth said. They need sentence starters and frames to be able to build these. I think that's such a great scaffold. Absolutely.
Yes. All right. Thank you for participating. Now we're going to switch over to Karen for modes of communication.
Awesome, thank you. So within each standard, there are both interpretive and expressive modes of communication, and they are noted in the standard after the language function. Just as a reminder, the interpretive is the receptive mode, that listening, reading, and viewing, which we've added. And then the expressive is the productive mode, which is speaking, writing, and representing. So here you can see in purple, we've got the interpretive labeled there and the expressive. And so look in the next slide, we're going to unpack that a little bit further. What I would like you to do is notice what kinds of verbs are used in the interpretive objectives. Drop that in the chat. We've got the interpretive right beside, I love this because it's right beside each other so that you can see on that left side the verbs that they used. Put in the chat. Exactly. Exactly. We're going to be identifying, analyzing, and evaluating. All right. And now, what kinds of verbs are in the expressive objectives? What do you see there? Yes. Introduce and support and use and connect. All right. How are they similar? And feel free, you can unmute as well, um, or just put in the chat. How are these interpretive and expressive similar? Yes. Okay, we've seen these in for depth of knowledge, right? They're still all on topic, but it's different levels of blooms, right? And then how are they different? Right. Good deal, Diana. Different thinking and skill. Mildred says they reinforce what you've learned or taught. Yes. All right. Yes, Shanika, internal knowledge and external representation of that knowledge. It's visible thinking, right? Making what they're learning visible. I love that. Okay. Yes, you've got it. You're on the right track. Let's go to the next slide, and it's your turn. Okay, so what I would like you to do for this is to look at this other example. This is an ELD math example for grades 6 to 8, and we're looking on the left. What are the interpretive, or to interpret mathematical explanations by, what are the verbs there? Exactly, exactly. Identify, analyze, and evaluate. And then over on the right, what are the expressive objectives or verbs that are used in the objectives? Correct again. Introduce, share, and describe and state. These are all going to be helpful as you're doing your artifact today. If you want to come back to the presentation when you go out into breakout rooms, you may want to revisit these slides or as you're looking in the standards as you create your artifact. Okay, how are they alike and how are they different? Right, I think we covered that. They're just different levels of blooms. We're all on topic. We're making our thinking visualized. Yes. And so, how did looking at these interpretive and expressive objectives, um, how does that help your understanding of where they might fit into your lessons? What can you take away from looking at it like this in this capacity? Is it going to help you think about these differently as you're developing your lessons? Right, we've got to do both, and expressive is at the end, but you can't wait till the end of the lesson to see everything that they've learned because you kind of have to do that formative assessment as you go along so that you're seeing what they're thinking and you don't have to reteach when you get to the very end of everything, right? So like Christina just pointed out, they can be simultaneous. Lower order tasks are going to be more at the beginning. Thank you, Abigail. Yes. Um, and Shanika said expressive and interpretive, and expressive again so that you can see what they know first and then facilitate. Good job. And you can do that too when you do like a pre-test, post-test, or a formative assessment to be able to know. Integration, yes, integration plays such an important role. Interpretive is receiving, expressing is the production, yes. And they're both necessary. It's kind of like reading and writing. And yes, mentor texts. I'm all about that and writing. Very good. Okay, so let's go on. Good engagement there. So our next objective is to create an artifact that will promote the future application of this material. So what you're going to do is choose a grade cluster and language expectation that you either are going to be teaching this next year or that you're just familiar with and you want to say, hey, what is in that ELD standards? And then you're going to choose a breakout room for your grade cluster that you've selected. You're going to choose a slide. It's going to take you to a Google presentation slide deck that is going to allow you to create your artifact. Together with your group, you're going to use one of the strategies for unpacking that we shared and unpack your language expectation. So whether you want to do number the skills or if you want to do oh, the name just escaped me. The best fit, where you're looking at the classroom scenario and where does it fit in the lesson, or the interpretive expressive, looking at the objectives, comparing and contrasting, and putting it in some kind of sequence with a lesson, so that you will be able to have a takeaway where you've unpacked a language objective and you can go revisit it again in the fall or between now and the fall as you're building your lessons for the fall. Some of you high achievers. Um, and the group needs to put their names on the page, and then you'll be able to see other people's work as well and how they impact it and how they what ideas they've gotten. So it'll be a shared resource. then what you're going to want to do is you're going to, Stacy, if you could go back to the book slide, please. You're going to want to share that link, copy that, and put it in your notebook for this session so that all your notes and everything will be tied to your artifacts so that as you receive a credit from your district, you will be able to have your artifact complete. Some districts require that, not all do, but we want to make sure that you have everything you need to get full credits if your district requires that. I'm not sure if we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that uh, our Teresa will be our administrative assistant. She will be emailing you your certificates for the sessions in a few weeks as she gathers them all with all the information together. But if you want CEU credit, you'll go through your district for that. So, any questions about that? What you're going to be doing now, just to reiterate, you're going to think about your favorite grade span that you want to dive into a little bit further to unpack. And you're going to go to that breakout room. And then you're going to work with the members there to unpack a standard. It can be math, science, social studies, ELA, and then and create that. And then we'll come back together as a group in, I think, because this is a big chunk of everything, 15 minutes, so that you'll have that time to really get into this. And if you have time, if you're in a speedy group, try to target both an interpretive and an expressive standard so that you can go through that whole back and forth that we talked about earlier, where you've got to do that receiving and that producing in your lessons for your students so that you can see their thinking.
So breakout rooms are now open. You should be able to access the breakout rooms through your WebEx panel. So you can join whichever grade span that you'll be working on as a group. If you're having trouble navigating WebEx and you can't seem to find your breakout session, please just drop it in the chat and we'll move you over.
Good stuff.
All right, looks like everybody should be back.
All right. So hopefully you had some good time to collaborate with some of your like grade level colleagues. And what we'd like to do is ask you to share with us what you've learned. Here's two questions. What more did you learn about the language expectations? Or what wows and wonders popped up for you? Wows and wonders are like, wows would be, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's great. Wonders would be, okay, I want to know a little bit more. Here are some of my questions. So I would like for you to either unmute or you can share in the chat. And to do this, I want to ask a representative from kindergarten if they would share out first. Who's our brave kindergarten soul that wants to unmute or share in the chat? Right behind that, our first grade representative. So if you're K or 1, please share with us. I have to give you a little time to type in.
Hi, I'm Rosemary. My team might be typing. I was
Yes.
with kindergarten, and one thing we learned is that so much of it is just right there, unpacked for us, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And so many things that we've done that can just be woven right in. And then you're just more looking for what could we add to make this even better. One of the things we kind of talked about and practiced was the best fit part of looking through that lens. And realizing too, like it really does depend on a number of factors, but that's kind of a cool thing too, because if a teacher really has an idea that um, they're excited about and have worked hard on, you can make things fit. It might not necessarily be the best fit. That's what we're looking for, but we did see that there is flexibility in that, and that it's important almost as a checklist to just make sure that you're doing an introduction and you're modeling, and then you're
Right.
guiding them and doing it together, that you're hitting each thing in order. Um,
That's great. I like
yeah.
how you're thinking. I like how you're putting it into sequence and making sure that everything is in there. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Okay, what about our first grade folks? Okay, Kavita is saying, wow, so many skills to focus on. 2, 3, I wonder how I will address them. I love that. Yes, this is complex, but it's by design, because we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to develop our students in in all of the different domains, the reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So all of the planning is going to be worth it. And once you get into it and kind of wrap your head around it, then it's like you can start getting those lesson plans churned out a little bit faster and faster as you go. All right. How about our grades 2 and 3? I need a representative from grades 2 and 3 to share with us.
I also
I don't
like what April just commented how, yes, this is not a 1 30-minute lesson, bless elementary school EL teachers or ML teachers. There's just to unpack one objective is going to take more than one little 30-minute section um, or session. So yeah, but it's all there. Isn't that great or not? I mean, it's just like once you get the pieces, you can take it and put it in different lessons and you'll get a rhythm with it. That's what I've noticed.
exactly.
Mhm.
Okay, that was 2, 3 that Kavita was saying. Okay, how about our 4, 5, grades 4 and 5? Does someone want to unmute?
Am I muted?
I can hear you,
You can
Elizabeth.
hear me?
Hmm.
Well, I teach grades 4, 3, and 4. And I know at those levels, the kids are at a higher language proficiency. And so in my mind, what swimming is key language use, like those words like narrate, inform, argue, and I'm not sure if
Explain.
it's explained, but right
Yes.
now there's nothing in front of me to see. But I know that at those higher levels, kids can explain and argue better because they're at higher proficiency levels. So we have to use what is there, the tools that are there, or what is required, because we ourselves will see, we will be grouping kids into, according to their levels. And we know more or less how to plan lessons to enable them to move higher, one step higher. So there will be
Hmm.
more challenges. It's more challenging, but it should also be always fun and interesting. And I know this is a lot that we are learning, but we embrace it because first it was like there and we were trying to connect, but now it's everything is explicit and clear, and we
Hmm.
can juggle things around and make it suitable for, our lesson plans can have all the colors and
Mhm.
all the necessary things that we need, all the tools, that we can
Mhm.
use are right there. So I am very appreciative of it because I started teaching in 2007 when I came from California. Before that, I was just a regular um, ELA teacher before I came here. And then I
Uh-huh.
accepted to be an ESL teacher and had to do the praxis and then later do my master's and all that. But I'm from the old school, so all these new things, every year there's something new, but I think this is the year that I was waiting for. That I've been waiting for something that I could tell everybody about and share, and
Yeah,
I think everything has been facilitated as far as this as far as the standards and
that's right.
you know
Yes,
whatever we are learning now is like I knew so much about it, but now it's so clear and I know exactly where to go and how to even share it with others in the building, so
that's exciting.
thank you
I
for
know.
listening.
Yes, yes, it's wonderful. I
And I'm
think
sorry,
DPI.
I'm late, but I got a bad um, message about a relative of mine, and I had to, take it in and take some time. So it's not no death, but just really sick. Okay.
Okay,
I'm
Thank
glad.
you.
thank
Hmm.
you
One
very
thing I
much.
just wanted to mention, Karen and Laura, if that's okay, just piggybacking off of a comment that was made in the chat. Remember that the things that you are going to see in those unpacking documents, of course, they're going to look like they might be for, a student that, is L3 or L4. But keep in mind, those are end of year expectations, right? So students have until the end of their grade level cluster to master those standards and those language expectations. So, of course, what
Right.
you're going to see is what those end of year expectations are going to look like. And any
Hmm.
scaffolding, anything that you do, is definitely going to be done more at the local level based on teacher judgment, because we know scaffolds are so personal to our students and the students that we have in our classroom, right? So just keep that in mind.
Okay, how about a representative from grades 6 through 8?
Well, I would like to say that as I look through this, I'm really pleased at how dense these clusters of skills are. And this is something that I've said many times. This is my 20th year teaching ESL in middle school. And I'm so pleased that in ESL, we don't have a pacing guide. And I have taught ELA where, on day 6, you had to be doing the day 6 lesson, and what's wonderful about this is that whole idea of, some of these skills are things that, um, you know, might take a few days to unpack. And I love that about ESL, that, just teaching, the thing we looked at was about, main idea and details and using questions to write a summary. you know, I mean, that might be 2 weeks worth of activity right there. And it would be a
Yeah.
great 2 weeks that you've spent working on these skills in order to be able to do some of these activities. I really like how it's written, and each one of these little steps, I think, oh gosh, that could be a day right there. So
Mhm.
yeah, good stuff.
Michael, I actually just want to add on to what you were saying too. I think ESL and or at least the ELD standard course of study and honestly the ELA standard course of study are very much connected in the way that we teach language and the way that we teach literacy. So keep in mind too, I'm not sure who your district is, but pacing guides really shouldn't be used for ELA either. What really should be used are curriculum maps, because you with the way we learn language, right? We don't learn those skills in isolation. We learn them in integration with one another. They reinforce one another. So it's something that we always have to continue to come back to. It's not something that we can, you know, teach on day 1 through 3 and then be done with it, right? Because we continuously come back to it. So that's just me getting on my soapbox. I'm sorry, but I'm a former ELA consultant on the ELA team before I moved into this role. So I just want to make sure that your district knows that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was back in the day when we rode a stegosaurus to school. So this was quite some time ago.
All right. Thank you for all the conversation in the chat as well. Do we have a grades 9 through 12 representative?
Laura, someone put one in the chat for 9 through 12 as well, if someone wants to read that.
Okay.
I have it
Oh,
here.
here.
It says the standard we worked with dealt with narrating and making connections. We tend to think that interpreting comes earlier in a lesson. Reading and expressive is often a product of learning, but sharing first and interpreting later can promote language comprehension. The in the classroom example switch things up by building engagement through sharing first. ESL teachers may know this, but it may be very helpful for promoting these strategies in content classrooms. And yes, yes, yes. And we're actually, I believe, the content teachers are our target audience for tomorrow's session. So super excited to share this with them. Thank you. And that was Abigail. Thank you, Abigail, for typing all that in.
Excellent.
I'm also seeing PSYOP should be used to scaffold. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. For lower level and all levels. Yes, yes.
I think the more that, I think ESL teachers go through a lot of training, and I think all of us have a very full toolbox. And I find myself using bits and pieces throughout everything that I do. And that's really using everything to our benefit and to the benefit of our students. So awesome stuff.
Laura, we also have a question here. It says, after determining if they are comprehensive, moderate, or transitional, do you group your students by their access reading level mostly, if possible?
That's a LIEP reference right there. So I think each district will do that differently. I look not just at the reading, but I look at all of the scores. But yes, because reading is where we cut off, I think that's a good idea, a good rule of thumb. What do you think about that, Karen?
Well, for me, it's nice to be able to have my lower proficiency students together and my higher together, because then I can target different skills. Whereas my older or my more advanced proficiency levels, maybe they just need a lot more with writing. Whereas my newcomers and my lower levels, they need like the whole gamut and a lot more sentence stems and sentence starters to get their writing going. So when I can, I do that. But I've worked in both settings where I've had 3 schools, and then I'm very blessed right now to just have 1 school. So it just is, it's the big school picture of where's the master schedule fall. That I like having the mix of not just one particular level, because then they're learning from the older, or the not older, but the more proficient. And then I do a lot of peer work. So then my higher proficiencies are working with my lower proficiencies too. And I think that they can feed off that energy and that comfort level they have with each other in the ML classroom to be able to grow their language. So it just kind of depends on, again, what your LIEP is, as you mentioned, Laura, and then the school schedule and your ability to be able to work with your students in that framework. But yeah, I always look at what their levels are as I'm mixing groups. I hope that helps.
Wonderful. And we've got some great explanations of what type of support that is on the LIEP. So we do have different levels of support based on proficiency level. So that's so good. Thank you guys for jumping in and helping to explain. Now we're going to move on to the Connections to North Carolina ML. I'm going to have to get used to that ML initiatives. So multilingual learner initiatives. All right. So as we look through the new standards unpacking document, you're going to read about many strategies that are embedded in those classroom sample ideas. And so basically, we don't want to use the same strategy over and over, the same technique over and over. We want to have different strategies and things that we use because the brain research tells us that we have to learn about the brain and how the brain learns before we can devise a way to teach others. And so using a strong strategy to teach the new standards is a great idea to help students grow and succeed. And with that, Karen is going to talk to us about some of the best practice strategies. Yes. You're unmuted, or you're muted, Karen.
Thank you. I'm just talking away. Let me back up. Okay, so no matter what the first language is, best practices begin with Stephen Krashen's low affective filter. That is creating that low anxiety learning environment. And when you're not in a fight or flight mode, the body can be receptive to learning. When our multilinguals come into a new school, there are many phases that they may go through. Initially, there may be that honeymoon period where everything is new and exciting. And however, they may end up in culture shock as the classroom environment is either not quite the same as where they're from or just listening day after day and not understanding the language, they're just exhausted. So there is an adjustment period. However, with that warm, welcoming environment, appropriate scaffolding, and other supports, students will adapt and learn. There is much to read on this, and one of my personal favorite resources is linked here for you, the OELA EL Toolkit. And it has a lot of great information since this has been like a 3-day state presentation that Alicia Doss and Tim Sims are just like famous for. And so to condense that in like 2 minutes is just really hard to do. But anyway, there is another resource for you there to look more into that with more strategies. And moving on, Laura's going to talk about GLAD.
All right, and thank you, Karen. So I'm privileged to be one of the OCDE Project GLAD trainers for the state of North Carolina. It is definitely an honor to be able to introduce these strategies to the East Coast. These have been used a lot on the West Coast for about 30 years. OCDE stands for Orange County Department of Education in California. And GLAD stands for stands for Guided Language Acquisition Design. So we're guiding students through a unit that is specifically tailored to different components. So there's different areas that we are bringing the students through a unit. And because we didn't have a whole lot of time today to talk to you about GLAD strategies, I've condensed this down to 2 of my favorites. There's over 150, but here are 2 of my favorites that are a little more simple. Number 1, on the left side, you'll see the learning log, and this is a student example. Learning logs are a great formative assessment after you've just completed some direct teaching. So whether that's a read aloud, a lesson, an experiment, or anything that you teach, you can use this simple T-chart and students can reflect on their learning. On the left, on the text side, we ask students to connect to the text with specific questions such as, what did you learn from blank? On the right side, or the you side, we ask students to connect with what they just learned about their, I'm sorry, I messed that up, to connect what they just learned to their own life. And so You might have a question like, how does this connect to your life? At first, you may need to model this, but then students really catch on quickly. And I ask them to do drawings as well, and that helps me to see what they know and what they've taken in. And then on the right side, this is called Listen and Sketch. And what you do is you find a text that goes along with your unit or your lesson. And it could be a poem, an excerpt of a longer text, a storybook, um, and different types of text. And then you're going to mark 6 different stopping points. And you can absolutely do that with a sticky note or a little flag and find those 6 stopping points ahead of time. Then, when you're ready to do the strategy, you're going to ask students to fold a piece of white paper into 6 boxes and number those. Then you're going to ask them to just only have the paper and their pencil on the desk. Then you're going to start reading the text that you've already prepared. And then you're going to stop at each stopping point and allow students to sketch the picture in their mind. And I use those particular words right there. Stop and sketch the picture in your mind. And it's just amazing to see how well the students will listen and sketch out what they see in their mind's eye. All right, and the example that I've got linked here is a solar system poem. There's a link to that particular poem with the 6 stopping points. And then this is a student example. And in the first box, in the poem, the student is dreaming about going into space. So if you can see that first box on the top left, you can see that there's somebody sleeping and they're dreaming about going to space. So this student was just on point all the way through this poem. And if you get a chance to look at that poem at some point, you'll love to see how these drawings match up. And you can definitely extend this into um, a writing activity. You can do all kinds of things with this. You can incorporate technology, have them create slides on their iPad. There's just endless possibilities with it. So those are 2 of my favorite things. And I will turn it back over to Karen for more strategies.
You're muted, Karen.
Thank you. So years ago, NCDBI adopted Dr. Margarita Calderon's Excel strategies. And so I'd like to just share a few of those here. The first is their 7-step vocabulary pre-teach for the vocabulary section, where the teacher says the word and the student repeats the word each 3 times. So the teacher's modeling the word, then the student's repeating the word. And then the teacher provides the word in context from the text, a dictionary definition, and then provides a student-friendly definition. And then these they highlight a feature of the word. Students ping pong back and forth for 1 minute, actually using the word in a sentence frame, so that the teacher's monitoring, seeing that they do have an understanding of the word in context. And then the teacher shares how the students will be accountable for the word later. Some of the reading strategies where the teacher read alouds, where the teacher reads and then thinks aloud about what they've just read to show comprehension strategies and help wire the brain for that kind of thinking. Doing partner reads, especially with your newcomers. Multiple reasons to go into the text. They're doing the write around where they're using that new vocabulary and new concepts for the content, the cut and grow, tear ups, and raft. There's so many wonderful resources for Excel, and Dr. Calderon has shared these on her website. So I've included that link there at the bottom of the slide for you to be able to access. And you can print out table tents for transitional language and doing tiered language, all of that, those wonderful strategies. Okay, so next we're going to go on to Padlet. So I would like you to feel free to share as you think about those research strategies that we've learned over the past years in in North Carolina, and with our conferences and different state initiatives, the whole idea behind sharing these strategies again is to think back now on these new standards and how you can pull from those strategies to be able to put your lessons together with these standards and be able to um, incorporate some of those strategies. So with this link here on the Padlet, we want you to feel free about going in, and you can either scan it on your phone or device or link in and then add some ways you can add those into your objectives. Okay. So if you'd like to take, yes.
Just one other thing too is I'm going to share the link to the Go Open discussions that we also have, and we are encouraging everyone to share their artifacts in there as well. And I'm going to go ahead and put the links in the chat for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Stacy.
All right, some great discussion in the chat, and I personally got to meet Dr. Calderon, and I can't remember the gentleman's name that worked with her a lot.
Hector Montenegro.
Yes, yes, they came to my school. They videoed some of my teachers, and they are just so professional and so amazing. And the Excel strategies are definitely tried and true, tried and true. Good stuff. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit more to our next objective for today is reflection. And, reflection is powerful. It is vital to building and cementing your learning. Because if you just are taking in information, like if you're just standing in, I'm thinking about solar system at the moment. If you've just got asteroids flying at you, that's kind of the way it feels sometimes. You have to slow down. You have to take a minute to process. And I'll just throw this in. With GLAD, we have what we call 10 twos, which is 10 minutes of instruction, 2 minutes of processing. And we have to take that time to sit and reflect and think about what it is that we've just experienced. And we can reflect in lots of different ways. And it's good to teach our students to do the same thing. Now, I would like for you to think about your lessons and how you apply the standards. All right, so we have our brand new standards. You've gotten to dip into those a little bit today and hopefully the other days this week. And in the chat, I'd like for you to summarize your learning in 3 words. This is going to be, you're going to have to really think about choosing your 3 words. So summarize your learning today in 3 words in the chat. Wait time is fine. We do this in ESL, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Oh, look at this. Eye-opening, exciting, motivating, detailed, comprehensive, overwhelming, beneficial, packed, much needed, assessing, applying, adapting, unpacking, integrating, collaborating, read, organize, practice, mind-blowing, clear, enlightening, beneficial. I'm just picking out words.
I
If we were
hope
doing
mind
a
blowing was
Wordle,
good.
what'd you say?
I said, I hope that was a good mind blowing.
Well, I mean, think about it. It is because, the hours of creative power that you are reading, it is mind blowing. And that's okay. Just unpack it layer by layer, bit by bit. And that's what I hope that you'll be taking away today. And you just have to see that, yes, at one point it looked scratchy, but all pretty and polished. That's what it looks like. But the hours and energy that has been poured into that are incredible.
Thanks, Jamie. There was a clarification. It was not in a negative manner. So
Oh,
that's wonderful.
mind
Wonderful.
blowing in a good way.
I like
Okay.
optimistic. I love that word, optimistic. Me too. I feel that same way. I embrace that word because I love all the different elements and just it's who was it? Somebody also said dense. That
Mm.
it's just packed full of great things that we can take and then actually just do in the classroom. I like that. Mind stretching. Nice.
Highlight circle number. That's a
Mhm.
great way to break it apart, break it down.
Yes.
So good. Thank you so much for your participation. It's so much fun when we have a group that is like you, and we've been blessed. All of our sessions have been so amazing, including today.
Mhm.
All right, Karen, will you take us to the next step?
Yes, so we're going to revisit our objectives to make sure we did everything we set out to do today. And so we said we would become acquainted with the purpose, format, contents, and location, which we did. And then we said we would provide ideas for how to use this resource and implement, which we did. We've reflected on our own practices and thought about research-based strategies that we've learned to be able to continue to unpack these in our classrooms in the fall when this is implemented. And we worked on an artifact. I would like to remind you to make sure that you take that link that we create of the shared document and paste that link into your notebook, your conference notebook, or you could copy and paste what you worked on and put it that way too. However you want to do it, whatever works for you. It's about you. Okay? And we would like to also ask you to please fill out an application. No, an evaluation, a different ION word, right? To give us some feedback on not only this session, but what PD will help you. So we're going to close out a few minutes early to give you a chance to be able to do that. And because we do value your time and want to make sure that you have a chance also to ask any questions that you want to. So we can take questions or comments now. Additionally, we will have office hours today from 3:30 to 4:30. And we have a link there for you to join us for that session. That will take you to a group session where all of the sessions today will be coming together. But then as you come into the group, we will break out into our particular session.
I'm about to drop the link to the PD evaluation in the chat. Please just we just want to remind everyone as you're filling out that evaluation, make sure that you include the correct title in the evaluation. And this session is unpacking the ELD standards. So if you would include that in the evaluation, that would be great. And the links to the notebooks are included within this slide deck. And I'll make sure to drop that link in the chat again for you.
Thank you, Stacy.
And again, Karen and Laura are going to stick around for a little bit to answer any questions that you have in case you can't make it to office hours this afternoon. But otherwise, just make sure that you complete that PD evaluation.
And thank you for taking time out of your summer and away from family and friends to actually join in today and be able to attend this session. It means a lot. It was a big year, and so we value and thank you for your time to be present here today.
Yes, I want to thank you as well. I know that this is multifaceted, multi-layered, but that's okay. We can unpack it piece by piece. We can make sense of it together, and everyone's ideas really do help, no matter how small they are. They might be the critical piece to really unlocking some things that we've been thinking about. So I really appreciate your participation and your time today.
Someone asked where they can find the notebook. If you look on slide 4 of the presentation, if you were able to scan or join the slide deck, it's on slide 4. And let me see, I will go ahead and drop that in the chat. I'm hoping that's going to just... Didn't link it. Here we go. And again, if you made a notebook previously, you don't need to make a new notebook. Just go back into your original notebook. But I've dropped that notebook link again in the chat for you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love the feedback, like what they enjoyed about it, or what you all enjoyed about it. Practical, supportive, and positive. I like that. Great 3 words.
I know there were so many good ones.
Intricate. Ooh.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Eye-opening, motivating connection. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
We
Deep
really do
dive.
read. We really do read what you write.
Yes. I like this one, deep dive, comparing, mind stretching. That reminds me of other experiences. Yes.
Abigail, if you were able to
Stretches.
access the presentation, they're all you have access to everything that you saw. And if you go to that resource link, as far as on the Calderon, the Excel slide, that resource page that's linked there has all of those strategies.
All right, well, if there is no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and close the room to everyone else.
Thanks, Alicia.
Can you guys send the slides again, please? I'm
Sure.
sorry. I'm trying to save on my laptop.
Sure.
Thank you.
Where is that?
It's also linked in your notebook too, already if you need it.
Yeah, I was attending the meeting on my phone, so I just got access to my laptop. That's what happened.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let me go back up and get to the slide deck. I love that, Shanika. Or is it Shaniqua? That's, yeah, lesson planning for ML teachers and content teachers. Thank you so much. That's good feedback. Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much.
Okay, I think it's just us now.
Hi, us now.
Okay, that was great. I think like I really liked how you guys interacted more with the participants this time around. And then the fact that you mentioned, Laura, that integration piece, which not integration, sorry, you mentioned like with the initiatives and you mentioned the standards, that was great. The only thing, oh, and Karen too, like I really loved how you were really affirming everybody's comments in the chat. That was really great. And that makes it more engaging, I think. One thing that I would just make sure of is just don't be afraid to slow down when you're when you're modeling the strategies or even when you're interacting with them, because we did add those new highlights on those slide decks, so even going over that would be great. Like for instance, I'm trying to think, like with strategy 3, even pointing out the fact that like maybe they have to think about too, like where this, if there's semicolons and things like that in there, because there are multiple skills within one bullet even. um, and I mean, I think that's pretty much it. But yeah, don't be afraid to slow down and especially on that third strategy because it's such a great strategy.
Okay.
But it was great. I think it just gets better each time. The only other thing that I wanted to mention to you, and this is my fault, I changed slide 31 to the go open thing because I forgot that Satley wanted everybody to start putting their artifacts in go open just to make sure we have everything in one place. So I went ahead and changed that slide, but in their notebooks, they'll still have the link to the Padlet.
Okay.
Okay.
And that the directions for go open are in the notebook too.
So, look, I just need to understand. Okay, so feel free to share on Go Open. They're going to share their whole their conference journal. I'm concerned because if they share their link with Go Open, that is a live editable link that others can go in and do things with. So what are they sharing on Go Open? I'm just
Their copy of the
their copy of their notebook. Okay.
with
All right.
with their completed artifact, a copy of theirs. After the conference though, we're gonna be closing all of those links
I was going to say. Yeah. Friday, I need to make myself a note to make sure that that entire thing is view only. I will do that. Do we ever make it past office hours? Do I need to move that slide 38 and 39 up? Because we always end with the office hour slide.
I think it's okay. This time I was just trying to, I didn't advance the slide to the thank you just because there were so many like private comments in the chat that I was trying to address,
I know you have so many things. I'm like, oh my gosh.
but I'll just make sure to advance it faster next time. But we should be good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, that's it. I guess I'll see you guys at office hours.
Okay.
34 minutes.
Great job.
Thank you.
All right. See ya.